Hello guys, welcome back to Beyond the Realms, and today I have a review for David Lynch's film from 1984 entitled Dune, which this is based off of the classic sci-fi book from Frank Herbert that came out in, I believe it was 1965. Uh, I just recently read the book, and I was just totally and completely blown away by how amazing the book was. It's truly a standard setter for all of sci-fi. Like everything that came after it, like I could just see hints of every sci-fi film that out of this book. It's just it totally amazed me. And I had heard, that this film wasn't very good. And, I've never been a David Lynch fan, to be completely honest with you. I've just never really cared for his style. I know there's a lot of people out there that do like him. Um, but, if I wouldn't have read the book, I probably wouldn't have been interested in watching this movie. But after reading the book, I was like, I've got to check this out. I have to see how this film is, how bad it is, because I'd heard so many things, that it was just a terrible film. A lot more than what, you hear good things about it. So I picked this up today at Barnes & Noble for $10. It was on sale. And, it's there's two ways of looking at this film. There's the people who have read the book and watched the film, and those who have not read the book and watched the film. I would highly recommend that if you have not read the book, just don't even bother with watching this film, because they don't explain things in this movie like they do in the book, which, that's usually the case. But with something like this, where you're dealing with a lot of foreign terms that are only used in this universe, like the Bene Gesserit, the Kwisatz Haderach, and things like that, and the Gom Jobber. They don't explain those things in this movie. And if I would have just watched this movie, I would have never read the book, which is very unfortunate, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have only seen this movie and they're like, man, just screw this stuff. Because it's just very confusing. It just doesn't. They don't explain those things, because a lot of those things, are explained through thoughts, or just in different ways, just hard ways to put out there onto the screen. And but other than that, if you've read this book and you've never seen this movie, I would definitely recommend to check it out, because I was totally surprised how close this actually does follow the book. There's a few big plot points left out. One being the dinner party that they have, once the Atreides family takes over planet Arrakis, and they have that dinner party. And they know somebody is there's somebody that's a traitor in their camp, but they can't figure out exactly who it is. Like, that's completely skimmed over. The things with the still suits, the suits that they have to wear when they're out in the open in Arrakis, that's totally just blown over. I mean, they have the still suits in this. They're wearing the things that, conserve all of their moisture out of their body, because Arrakis, for those of you that don't know, Arrakis is a planet that it's a complete desert planet. There's no water there. It never rains. Well, there is water there, but it's very, very, very limited, to the point where they have to wear these suits that like replenishes their body's moisture just to have something to drink. They have those suits in this movie, but they do not explain it whatsoever. It's a very confusing movie for those that haven't read the book. There's just no way I could have found any enjoyment out of this movie whatsoever if I hadn't read the book. But with that said, having just read the book, just finished it last week, I really like this movie a lot. I'm very glad that I bought this, that I took the chance, despite all of the poor reviews this movie's got. I liked it a lot. There's a lot of great cinematography in this of vast desert landscapes of Arrakis. And then, one aspect of this movie and of this story that is very easy to see of another Hollywood film that completely took its idea from this is the movie Tremors. There are worms in this movie that are on the planet of Arrakis that are underground. They're and anytime there's any type of rhythmic pattern, people walking, machines working or whatever, it draws the worms, it attracts the worms. They go under the surface and they pop up and they have these huge open mouths that have thousands of teeth in it, and they destroy whatever is there. I mean, that is just totally taken, Tremors took from that. And the worms in this are very well represented, I think. They look very good. That's one aspect of the special effects that actually looks really good. A lot of it was done with miniatures, you could tell. But there are some special effects in this movie that just look awful. Just flat out awful. I mean, even for 1984, some of these looked bad. I mean, they had to have looked bad when this film first came out. And one example of that is their shields. They got this thing on their belt that creates a shield where it's not impenetratable. I mean, it can be penetrated, but it is like a force field that helps be like a deterrent to knife attacks or whatever it is. And man, when that pops up in this movie, it's laughably bad. It is so freaking bad looking. I mean, it's just like a force field around. It's very square, very blocky, and you can still see the character under the shield, but it's you can't see through it real clear. You can still tell who the person is, but it just looks awful. And then some of the scenes in the ships and stuff like that, you can tell they're composite shots and they just look bad. I mean, even for that time, they look bad. But there's not a lot of ships in this stuff, I mean, despite this film being a sci-fi film, the story, I should say, it's very relatable, in a lot of its themes. There's a real spiritual aspect to this movie and the story that I really like a lot. I mean, it's the story itself is just written so well. Frank Herbert, I mean, he created a complete masterpiece with this story. But going back to the movie, as you can see there, Sting from the Police is in this, plays Fade Rutha, something like that. It's Fade, but he is one of the Harkonnens, and he is just pointless in this movie. He's so terrible. I mean, some of the acting in this film is very over the top and very, very dated. I would even say dated for its time. But he's awful in this film. I don't know why they cast him, if it's just the name recognition or whatever, but he's just bad. He's really bad. And the lead guy here that plays Paul Atreides, so-so. I mean, still really cheesy, over the top at times, but he works, Overall, the acting and everything wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. It works for the most part. But it is dated. I mean, everything about this movie is dated. And that's one thing that I don't understand why, somebody hasn't came along and done a real good adaptation of this movie. Because, I mean, you think of things like Harry Potter movies, the Lord of the Ring and Hobbit movies, fantasy type films, sci-fi type films, with Star Wars coming back out. I mean, this is just ripe for discovery once again, because this is just such a groundbreaking story, and it's such a great story. Because without this, there wouldn't be no Star Wars, no question about it. If you know anything about this story and you've read it, you realize how much this film and this story influenced Star Wars. I mean, there can be no question about it whatsoever. And I just wish somebody would come along and really do a great film of this. And Frank Herbert wrote 5 other books past this, and then his son Brian Herbert took over, and has written several books. I think there's 18 books in total that are based in the Dune universe. And I've actually, after reading this one, I found out the timeline of the stories, and I'm actually going back and reading, starting with the very first prequel book right now. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much that could be done with this story and this universe. I wish somebody would do it right. But this film on its own, guys, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. If the effects weren't so dated, I'd actually rate it a little bit higher because, like I said, it follows the story so well. And it's worth checking out if you've read the book. And if you haven't read the book, please read this book. It is just awesome. You don't really have to be a sci-fi fan to even get into it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, with politics and ecology and stuff like that, but there's a romance to it. I mean, there's just so many factors to this story. It's a very, very layered story, very complex. But I just highly recommend it all the way around. The movie, yeah, it's okay. I would recommend this movie to anybody that's read the book for sure. So yeah, guys, that is David Lynch's Dune. I am Jason. I hope you all are doing well, and I will talk to you soon, guys. Have a good one. Later.